So here we go again. Another movie that's going to split the community straight down the center. One half is going to think that it is pretentious, mindless, boring drivel, and the other side is going to think that it's an art house, cinematic, symbolic, metaphorical masterpiece. This is David Lowery's The Green Knight. Now, he made a film that's kind of famously has this scene in it. This film, of course, being a ghost story, that features a character sitting at a table eating a pie for like 5 straight minutes by themselves. And knowing that, I've not seen the movie, even though I do own the Blu-ray because I got it at the Dollar Tree. I kind of knew from knowing of that scene, hearing about it from about 100 people at this point, that this was probably going to be on the slower side and more artistic. This is also A24, which I try to support always because they are a production house that likes to put more challenging, thought-provoking art house films into mainstream cinema. We don't get films like this ever. And I can tell you the reason that is because like my theater and like most people's theater I talk to, man, did my theater hate this movie. And I had friends who were like, I counted 3 walkouts at mine. I counted 6 walkouts at mine. Yeah, a lot of angry people. The people behind us were so fucking annoying. They were talking throughout. They were laughing. They were talking shit about it. When the movie ended, they just bombed the movie with insults and anger and whatever. And at least most of the theater was on board with them. They were all just groaning and like, what the fuck did that all mean? Now, the source material this is based on, I know nothing about. So I am not one to comment on that stuff at all. I know that this is like, King Arthur type stuff, but I don't know this poem or this tale or whatever it is that it's based on. So I am not the person to go to for that stuff. That all being said, I can only tell you my experiences as the viewer who knows nothing about the source material. Now, this, as far as the plot synopsis goes, it's kind of hard to talk about that, but I can say the main character played by Dev Patel is, he is in a room with the king and others, and this figure called the Green Knight comes in to the hall and proposes this game that if you strike him, that he'll get to strike you the same way within a year. Dev Patel's character makes the mistake of striking him a little more viciously than he probably should have, and then for the next year he has to kind of realize that the inevitability that this is coming back to him, what he did, kind of like what you do unto others, what you do unto yourself, I guess is kind of, probably one of the takeaways from the film. But then he sets out on his journey to meet the Green Knight, where he's supposed to. And it's really just an adventure of him trying to get there and mentally preparing himself for what's to come. This film is beautifully shot. I mean, there is no argument. I don't think anyone is going to say anything else but that. The acting is excellent. So if you're going for technical aspects like, cinematography or acting or writing or all that stuff is all very, very good. So I think that everyone will be happy with that. The film features very little dialogue. I mean, there's definitely scenes of dialogue, but it is a quiet film. There is probably not a second of this movie that does not have music playing, though. The film has a very, very, very good soundtrack, and it plays heavily throughout, which I feel makes the film feel less boring than it might if it was a quiet film. It has quiet moments, but the soundtrack really, really hits a lot. Everyone is very good, as I said. Alicia Vikander, Joel Edgerton, all these guys are solid. The film for me worked mostly. I love the way it looked. I love the adventure of everything. That all being said, it's definitely not an entertaining film, nor is it trying to be. So I did find the film to definitely drag at times. This will be an absolute 10 out of 10 masterpiece to a certain crowd. I knew exactly who that crowd was when I walked out of it. I was like, oh, my buddy David, like I had a few people, I'm like 100%. And then as soon as they saw it, they're like, my favorite film of the year, easily. Don't know if anything's going to beat it. And I'm like, I know exactly the kind of people that this is going to appeal to. This is going to appeal to people who are into like slow burn, art house, kind of, there's a lot of, this is not a film that goes by any of the conventions. This is going to bore the fuck out of so many people. People in the audience are going to be so pissed off if you go to see this in theaters with them. This is not a film for everybody, but does that mean, that doesn't take anything away from the film. I don't want to make that sound like a negative. Half the people in my theater hated Hereditary, and I thought it was the greatest fucking horror movie I'd seen in 30 years. So, the audience's liking of it does not speak to quality for me. But it does speak to the percentage of people that are going to like this movie. I think you know exactly what you're getting yourself into if you are a film fanatic and you've seen the trailer and you're familiar with his work. Like, you know what you're getting yourself into here. You know how this film is going to not be conventional, as I said, that it's not going to, that it's going to have long drawn out scenes, that in the end you're going to wonder what the fuck just happened and what was the point of all of that. Some people, it'll be poetic and they'll get all of it all at once and it'll completely work for them. I'm not one of those people. I definitely left the theater saying, what does this mean? Why couldn't it have been like this in a way? Not everything, just like, is this necessary? And why didn't this happen? And I just feel like definitely a little more could have happened and a little less of the film could have happened. But I don't know. A buddy of mine, Cecil from the horror show, said that it is like a collection of short vignettes. I can see that. That are kind of disconnected from one another. I definitely can understand that. I don't know. I definitely left the theater going, what was the point of all of that? But that doesn't mean that I can't go back and watch it again. And I did have a great conversation with Kaylee after. We talked about it for like 45 minutes after, just breaking down all the scenes and what their meanings were and why we think these scenes worked or they didn't work. So it was a very good discussion film, for sure, for people who love cinema. If you're just going for like mindless entertainment, you want a Fast and the Furious type movie, you want some big action, a fantasy epic, Lord of the Rings, that is not what this film is at all. And I feel like the trailer could be very misleading to some people. But if you know what art house A24 films are like, you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. So for me, I don't feel like anyone who watches my channel is going to be surprised with what kind of film it is. It's just whether or not that works for you. And for me, it worked, I'll say 65% of it, 70% of it, somewhere in that area. And then, so I left it ultimately liking it, but definitely feeling like I didn't get things. But could that come up on a second viewing? Yes, for sure. It could go down though. So I'm not really sure how I feel about this film. This is definitely a difficult one to discuss and review, but overall, a technical marvel for sure. Fantastic filmmaking and everyone involved in it, awesome. It's just more of if you're going to be on board with the storytelling and or the lack thereof, and just kind of making things out, because there's so many things that happen. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? What in the hell is going on here? You know, it's one of those kinds of films. And when it ends, it's very much like you're like, oh, that's the ending. I can say that about 10 minutes before, 5 minutes before, I thought it was over. And I greatly preferred that ending versus the then tacked on 5 to 10 extra minutes. But I think it's because I wasn't fully understanding what those extra 5-10 minutes were. And then when we talked about it after, I was like, okay, maybe I could see that's what they were going for with that extra 10 minutes, 5 minutes. And maybe a second viewing or talking about it deeper with people who got it more than I did. You know, maybe watching an explained video or something from my dumbass might boost up the experience of it all for a second viewing. But as of right now, I'm on the fence of how much I liked it or disliked it. That was a really long way of saying that, but it's a difficult film, and that's good. That's good. Even if I fucking hated this movie, I'm glad that it exists, and I'm glad it's in theaters. I'm glad my theater was pissed off. Like, I don't want people to have a bad time, but I like them to be challenged. I like them, you know, not everything, and I'm not shitting on Marvel movies, because you know how much I love the MCU, but not everything needs to be a fucking Marvel movie. Not everything needs to be a straightforward, jump scare heavy horror film. And not that this is horror. This is very much, and that's another thing. This is not horror almost at all. Like, and the IMDb lists it as such. It's like a adventure fantasy drama, which is exactly what it is. There's almost no horror. There's atmosphere that's horror-like and scenes that could be considered horror-ish. But for the most part, it is very much fantasy drama with some adventure thrown in. But yes, everyone is good. And you should definitely check it out. Challenge yourself. See what you think. Let me know. Adios.